Statists and big government advocates often paint a dramatic picture of life without heavy regulations. They warn that corporations would run wild. Elevators would fall and kill passengers. Food would be filled with cheap and toxic chemicals. Planes would fall from the sky. Medicines would turn into deadly poisons. Workers would be exploited without mercy. The classic claim is simple. Without regulation, we would return to the age of robber barons, child labor, polluted rivers, and dangerous products. In other words, unchecked capitalism would lead straight to disaster and mass harm. In reality, supporters of ever-expanding state control often push for more regulations in the name of protecting consumers from supposedly evil capitalists. But very often, these same regulations end up helping not ordinary people, but the largest and most established companies. This phenomenon is known as regulatory capture. Regulatory capture happens when a government agency, created to regulate an industry, slowly begins to act in the interests of that industry instead of the public, especially in the interests of its largest companies. In practice, this means the industry starts writing its own rules. The results are predictable: barriers for new competitors, artificially high prices, lower incentives to improve quality, subsidies, exemptions, and special protections for established players. Here are a few real-world examples. First, U.S. railroads in the late 19th and early 20th century. Large railroad companies supported the creation of the Interstate Commerce Commission. Officially, it was meant to protect consumers and standardize rates. In practice, it blocked new competitors and allowed major companies to keep prices high for decades. Second, taxi medallions and licensing in many large cities before Uber. These rules were presented as safety measures. In reality, established taxi companies lobbied to limit the number of licenses. In New York City, a single taxi medallion once cost more than $1 million. This made it nearly impossible for new drivers to enter the market. Third, the pharmaceutical industry and drug approvals. Large companies often influence regulatory standards and approval processes. As a result, cheaper generic drugs can be delayed for years. This keeps brand-name drug prices high much longer. The same pattern appears in other industries. Large banks influence financial regulations. Major telecom companies shape broadband rules to slow down new competitors. Big, established businesses often like complex regulations. They can afford compliance teams, lawyers, and lobbyists. Small businesses and startups usually cannot. They struggle under the same regulatory burden. One of the clearest warning signs of regulatory capture is simple: when an industry starts demanding more regulation instead of resisting it. The final lesson is straightforward. Government power presented as protection for ordinary people can easily become protection for the largest players. Real competition and real consumer protection usually come from open markets, innovation, and freedom to compete, not from letting powerful companies control the regulators who are supposed to keep them in check.